On this episode of Phinside The NFL, I am joined by Brendan Tobin, and we're going to discuss a whole lot. We're going to discuss the latest Jonnu news, the Ramsey situation, and do the Miami Dolphins have the worst secondary in the NFL as it stands right now? We're going to cover it all. So do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jaylen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score!
Field down the near side, man open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. It's going over the touchdown again. Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fit Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one, and I am joined by Brendan Tobin. And it's been a while, man. I know subscribers of the channel have asked to see us together, so it's a pleasure to have you on. Hey, we're getting ready for mandatory minicamp in the middle of OTAs, in the middle of a lot of drama. I got to start off. How are you feeling as a Dolphin fan, and are your expectations as low as like 70% of this fan base right now?
I think it's kind of a defeated feeling, right? Like it's not like it's kind of like head down. Like we're all just grinding until it actually gets to football season. It doesn't feel like there's any actual anticipation of the summer or any of the news, because it's almost like you already know everything already, the where it's at, because of how disappointing last year was. So I'm kind of just I'm waiting just to get to the season, it feels like, because nothing in training camp is going to get anybody fired up. Nothing of headlines is going to get anybody in a great mood. Every day it just seems like they got a contract issue with somebody. So I don't know, it's not a low feeling, because I don't feel like they're going to be a bad team. But it feels like there's just very little juice going into the season.
Do you think it's a matter of, it feels like, every offseason recently we've won the Super Bowl in the offseason, and this is an offseason where we've taken a lot more L's, from the Armstead retirement to Calais leaving to, Ramsey wanting out, whether you view that as an L or not, all the Tyreek distraction. I've said it before, it really feels like the only W's we've racked up this offseason are the draft and the schedule. The schedule, I think, came out in our favor. Do you think that's probably because you're just not used to seeing us have such a down off season?
It just reminds me kind of like of just like Philbin era kind of anticipation, or like second season of Adam Gase going into, that type of, it always feels like there's always a lot of hope when a new regime starts. And then maybe there's even that next level of, oh, this can actually be something. And I think what it is like the Dolphins have been teetering in this weird purgatory for nearly a quarter century. But the difference with this was like we got a little taste back again of like national relevance, the team being fun, like people thinking that this may be a formula that's actually going to work. The team just gets off to this fire start. And then it's just like, man, ever since that Titans loss, it's all just kind of come crashing down. And it's not only that it hasn't worked, but everybody's reasons for why it doubted or didn't want to buy into it have kind of come true. Or your biggest fears of like quarterback hell have all kind of come true. Like, so now you're just in this feeling of like, well, the ones who wanted to believe in the team and have a lot of like optimism, even they got to be a little bit more turtled up now and not want to get hurt going into this offseason, because you can almost feel like where this is going. And so I don't think it really has so much to do with the spending. I think it's more like I've almost been had. I wanted because I think there were doubters and I think there were people who were always going to be more on the side of pessimistic, but more people I think are really hoping that, damn, can this team finally do something that hasn't been done in 25 years? It flamed out badly on top of Tua's injury. And so everybody's just like, so what do I believe in? Do I still believe in Mike McDaniel? Is all that juice still there? So I don't think it has to do so much with the spending as it does just the results and where things are trending.
The way things have played out. Where are you at with McDaniel?
I think he's got a lot to prove. You know, I was a believer in Mike because I feel like I believed in something that just wasn't true. And this really doesn't have anything to do with his offense and calling. I kind of get why some of that hasn't worked. And I think most of it is health and durability related, which were part of the risks built into the roster. So you can't skate on that because you always knew that was a possibility. But man, hearing about how poorly run it seemed like the team was last year, and that a guy I thought was a star whisperer and had a cachet to him and was part of the reason a lot of stars and high profile guys wanted to come here, man, it kind of does feel like they walked all over a guy and took advantage of that. And I don't think you could really wrangle that on top of the success eroding on the field now. So I still believe in his football brain that he's good at calling stuff. I think that's by the experts and the people who go up against him. I don't think you can question his ability to wheel and deal some of that stuff. But it's not all of the job. All of the job is also managing the team. And it's interesting because it feels like he's talked a lot about going into that position and what a challenge that was. And I still feel like maybe you have a guy who who has his shortcomings there. So I don't know what that's going to mean for him, but I definitely think that you're seeing a guy who's got all of the job kind of unfolding on him. He's had a lot of like controversies to deal with between like, hey, you were hiding concussions and like it just, you know, then you have off-field stuff with your wide receiver and all this stuff. Now you have contract disputes. And so look, he's definitely had a very busy first few years. But it does feel like a bit of a crossroad year for him to see if he's actually up for the job.
Yeah. And we need to, you're talking about seeing that growth. I mean, we need to see that growth as a play caller in the red zone. We need to see that growth, man. The time management, brother. I mean, with all the motions built in your offense, you need to be breaking that huddle with 20 seconds, not with 10 seconds. Because by the time he processes the defense, you got to snap the ball because of the motion. So he's stuck snapping a ball, even if he processes his pre-snap reads that everything's dead in the water. What can he do, right? And there's a lot to prove for Mike McDaniel. You talked about the wide receiver issues. Tyreek Hill, it's just been one thing after another. I know a lot of people on social media saw that he might have a new boo thing, and we're just all waiting for the paternity test to hit the wire any day now with this guy, because it's just one thing after another with Tyreek. I got to ask you specifically, because I was really surprised the amount of pushback, even though it was a minority. I was even surprised that people pushed back and were making excuses for Tyreek when that clip just came out, trolling or not, about how he wanted to knock out Mike McDaniel. Because I said to these people, Brandon, I said, listen, go make a video about your boss. Talk about how you want to knock him out. Make sure people in your company and your boss see it. And when HR calls you and say, no, I was trolling, I didn't mean it. And let me know how that goes for you. Where are you at with this Tyreek situation? Because I think now, like, man, we're just talking about McDaniel. I mean, we're all men here. As a man, how do you look someone in the eye after, like, whether he's trolling or not, that's embarrassing. That's putting you down and minimizing you and small timing you. What are your thoughts on how this just continues to unfold with Tyreek?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take any of the stuff with the streamer serious just because he is a troll. Like, that's the thing with him is like, he's very much familiar that his words get reaction. And I think there is a part of him that just enjoys that. I don't know if it's a maturity thing. I don't think it, or if it's just an element of him being a troll, but there's very clearly a bit of Tyreek that just enjoys the chaos of when I say things, it gets a reaction no matter what. Oh, I tweeted a peace sign that, what are they going to think about this today? I do a top 5 list. I used to say 2 was the best. Now he's not in my top 5 list. Like I just think that for him, he just knows, like, I think there's a part of him like, let me say this, watch this. And I think when you have that around enough, I think the team's probably just used to that. Like, I don't think the trolling stuff bothers them that much, because they do know he's one of the best weapons in the NFL. But professionalism, again, like the idea that, hey, were you not showing up to every practice or not doing it on time or doing it whatever you wanted, and made your wide receiver coach throw stuff sweep stuff under the rug and make him look like an idiot. That professionalism, when you're one of the top guys on the team, you're one of the number 1 players in the NFL, and the coach, sincerely or not, did try and empower you to this when you got here. You weren't the guy just leaving the Chiefs. You were going to be the face of the Dolphins in a lot of way. So I think that to deprive that of like, oh, I put you up as a leader, and my offense had you at your career high stats, number 1 player in the NFL, would think this would be a little bit more mutual, and it seems like they took more liberties, and it just kind of unraveled, especially when things got really hard last year. And that's the thing that's unfortunate about Tyreek, is that like this guy comes in here so gung-ho, voice of a new Dolphins era, cockiness. Like the Dolphins haven't had that like this guy is saying, I'm the best thing in the league. We're going to be the best thing in the league. And it was all great. It felt very like a new first year front runnery. And then it kind of, fizzled out ever since L'Jarius Sneed put him into the dust. Like it feels like it's just gone in this, it's just unraveled since then. And so I guess the thing that I'm at right now, reason is just, do you trust? Not that he's going to be. I still believe there's great football there, but if the team's not playing great, what's he going to be like? And like, if Tua does get hurt again, can this really even survive? And so I guess the question always is, in sports, isn't it better to get out in front of it? Because once people know it's a real problem, maybe they'll fleece you even more for a talent like him. But I just work not with that. He's a good football player or one of the best still in the league, whatever. It's, if this starts 1-3, is he in, or is he going to be rats off a ship?
Yeah. And I've talked about that. The other thing that worries me, and, I don't know him from Adam from Eve, but listen, we're all grown men. We've all had bad breakups in our life or whatever the case may be. The last thing we need is us to start off and professionally it goes sideways, while his personal life, with everything that's going on there with the divorce and everything like that, man, South Florida is the wrong place you want to be in if you're going to a dark place. Let me just say that, so that, like, that's what worries me, is this could be like a ticking time bomb, because, and I'm not even like judging him off that. I'm actually saying I understand in his personal life if it goes sideways, because I've been married for 12 years. I couldn't imagine being without my wife and my kids. You're married, I'm sure you couldn't imagine being without your wife and kids. So I'm not even judging. I'm just saying, man, like, that's a lot for any man. That's a lot of burden for any man to shoulder. And then if professionally things are going sideways, I could see this being something where at the trade deadline, if some contender is calling, they just ship him out of here just to get him out of here and get the headache out of here. I wanted to ask you this, because you made a really good point about the Snead thing. Are you worried at the fact he's like 183 pounds now?
No, because that feels like he's getting, first of all, I think, I think getting older, maybe losing a little bit of that is probably good for him. I don't really worry about that too much, but I did notice that was an interesting thing for him to say. Now, I guess he said he was 197. He was listed at 193. So if he's honest, which is always the thing you also have to take into account for him, I don't feel like losing 10 pounds of muscle at this side of 30 is necessarily a bad thing for him.
Yeah.
Just be faster than the cornerbacks, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. You think a big year's coming for Waddle?
He's another one. It's kind of like, yeah, I hope so. Like you would think, because it felt so obvious that he was going to be the heir apparent.
Yeah.
It was funny, you and I talking about like draft preview or draft takes from old. But my buddy who used to be my producer, Robbie the Degenerate, shout out. Man, this dude swore up and down, like, do not take Jaylen Waddle. He was a Penei Sewell guy. And I remember him always saying, he was like, the Dolphins don't have the balls to draft Penei Sewell. And like, he just kills me on it every single week. He's just saying me about Penei Sewell. And I can't say anything right now because I need Waddle to come through. Especially in a year where like, hey, Tyreek Hill maybe was a little bit banged up. What can you do? And it just, it didn't offer a lot of inspiration. Plus, who is he to put his celebration in the can? Like, you have a touchdown dance and you're a bit of a showman. You just put the Waddle away last year by decision. I hated that. Like if you imagine like Jamal Anderson scoring a touchdown and he refuses to do the dirty bird.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like we all are there. We're all enjoying it. The owner, it's his favorite celebration. And Waddle's like, no. So not even on top of it did you not score a lot of touchdowns, but you've taken away one of the greatest joys of your touchdowns. So yeah. I hope it's back this year, or at least he's got to come up with some other Penguin-esque celebration, maybe like a belly slide or something.
Hey, listen, Waddle was my wide receiver 1 in that class, and Penei Sewell was my number 1 player in that class. The arguments I used to get on social media, Brendan, I dug up high school footage of Sewell because the vision for me was right tackle, Robert Hunt at right guard. People, we got our right tackle. It's Robert Hunt, blah, blah. And he's a left tackle. I said, bro, if you actually follow him, he came into Oregon as a left guard and they shipped him out to left tackle. And if you watch his high school, he played right tackle. I'm like, this is going to be seamless. Oh, Dolphin fans. Oh, no. We got Robert Hunt. And now I'm like, listen, I fought for Waddle, but I fought harder for Penei. And I can use hindsight. Penei was the move. I mean, we all saw. I mean, Austin Jackson can't stay. He's hurt more than Tua.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't a huge Austin Jackson fan when we drafted him for when we were running that gap scheme. But I knew when McDaniel came with the outside zone, I knew he'd be fine. I knew Eichenberg would be a disaster. What are your Tyreek and Waddle? You made a good, you were kind of talking about that. You kind of alluded to that first year with McDaniel where it really looked like you're a Panthers fan, you're a hockey fan. When you got 2 good centers, you say 1A, 1B. You don't call him the second center. It really felt like we had 1A, 1B receiver. Waddle had almost 1,400 yards. Tyreek had 1,600? Somewhere around that, 1,600, 1,700. And I felt like they went away from that, and the focus really came, Tobin. Let's get Tyreek his 2,000. I told, one of the first things McDaniel said to Tyreek was, I'm going to get you 2,000 yards. And now I'm seeing Tyreek out on the field saying, I'm back locked in on the 2,000. And maybe it's just a frustration for me, bro. But as a Dolphin fan my whole life, as someone who hasn't seen a playoff win since Marino was here, shouldn't the focus be, I want to bring a playoff win to Miami, not worrying about your own private legacy with 2? Because here's the thing. If you get 2,000 yards and we don't win a playoff game, do we care about the 2,000 yards?
No, not at all. No.
Doesn't that kind of disappoint
especially
you?
Now? If you would have done it and all right, but no, you get to year 3, 4 of things. No, of course, you need the results of it.
I don't know. And it just feels like, Brendan, he was brought here because he won in Kansas City, just like Ramsey was brought here because he won in LA. And that winning hasn't translated. You know what I mean? I mean, in some of the biggest games, Tyreek Hill leaves his hands on the bus.
He does.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's, we talked a little bit about that is you hated hearing all of these things all the time about, the softness or folding against the good teams. And you're just dying for them to prove you right. And they just can't and haven't done it. And I think that's the thing is so disappointing because I was all for. I mean, hell, taking a shot at if you can have a guy in your jersey, try and make history. Oh, that would have been awesome. But did it put a hindrance on Waddle? Because it always had this feeling of, this is Cheetah's team. Until that happens, you're always going to be that. Well, I think if he was banged up last year, which typically it's been Waddle who's had to deal with some durability stuff. But if Cheetah was banged up, there was not that step up. Yeah, it was severely disappointing. And yes, we all acknowledge, like, of course they had to, deal with the quarterback issue with Tua being out for half the season or a third of the season. But nobody wants to hear that. And I think even if you go back to the first season where there was like some Teddy Bridgewater games, like, man, they were still putting up numbers. This year was so like it was really like, man, they have no prayer without Tua out there. They really had no prayer without him.
Let me ask you this. A lot of people want to just blame the current players and the current staff. Do you think we are now, because we're 24, 25 years into this, are we beyond these regimes being losers and this is an organizational and fundamental problem? Like, you look at the Ravens, Tobin, you look at Ozzie Newsome put the blueprint in place, and multiple regimes whether it was Brian Billick, whether it was Harbaugh, they've all followed that blueprint for the trenches, the run game. You look at Green Bay, look at how they've handled the quarterback situation, right? They've always had seamless transitions because they've known how to properly develop, but they've never skimped on the offensive line, even though they've skimped on receivers. We can talk about how great Howie Roseman is in Philly right now, right? But you could go back to when Andy Reid was there, right? They always never lacked on the trenches. They always had a good run game, whether it was Brian Westbrook, whether it was LaShawn McCoy, didn't matter. It seems like a lot of these successful organizations right now have like a foundation in place, an identity in place. And it seems like is the issue for us and why we haven't won a playoff game is we haven't had an identity since Marino left.
Yes. Yeah, I think for sure. That's definitely, I think it definitely has trickled down. It's interesting, man, because you hate to put it all on Steve Ross because, man, Lord knows he's done a lot of good things as an owner. I mean, but as much as he's made this city a destination, and that's a great thing for people of events and all that stuff, and people that want to come down here for F1 or, tennis, or God love them. That's awesome. Glad Super Bowls are back. Hell, I served, Miami subs Euros at the last Super Bowl they had before they had to put the canopy on where it rained when Prince was there. We served the Baldwin brothers in that stand. But dude, it's been a mess. Like, he hasn't been able to find that through line of who he truly trusts in this organization. And I hate, I'm not, definitely, I know Chris Grier's had different responsibilities throughout that, but it kind of is like, it almost is, if you put to the fabric of like, Parcells gets the job. Everybody was thrilled about it. He's, bringing football credibility here in his golf cart. And I remember being at those practices, seeing him in that goofy golf cart, and, Jeff
with
Ireland taking his little notebook, the hat. Yeah.
The sun hat.
Yeah. And I'm just like, all right, this guy's football. And then even like that unravels into your proteges end up hating each other because one guy was a weasel and flew across the country, and that ended up unraveling I was at that awkward, I was in the room. It was a really,
you're talking about Sperano Harbaugh situation, right?
Yeah, dude. When they had the I'm sorry press conference, we were in this boardroom. I was sitting there. We had a senior reporter, Josh Friedman. We had a bunch of everybody you mentioned in South Florida pretty much these days who would be there. They were there. And it was dude, you just want to feel franchise ineptitude in a room. That's what it was, because I had Tony Sperano and his legs twitching in front of me because I'm at the side of the table. Yeah. Stephen Ross, who just is like looking at everybody aloof, and then just like Jeff Ireland feeling like a weasel in a room. And you're just like, this is what it is to be the horse's ass of the sports world right now, because you got caught trying to recruit a coach and never told, got caught. It's being tweeted. Nobody knew what Twitter was at the time. And Oh my God. And so,
And didn't
yeah,
they
it
just
just feels,
extend Sperano or something like that right before it or
well,
something?
they did. They extended him after this all went
Yeah,
down
yeah,
and he
yeah, yeah.
failed
And
to
then they
get Jim
fired him.
Harbaugh.
Yeah, they fired him a year into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, he like tried to get his timeout back.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
no, you don't. And they, he's yelling at the ref. So, yeah, it feels a little bit like since the guy, and I don't know, like he either hires the wrong mix of people or, will strangely then get confident and like give Joe Philbin an extension.
Yeah.
But then it's like wants Adam Gase, but Adam Gase has no interest in tanking because he's God's gift to football. So you got to fire him. Who do you bring in? Flores. We all love him, but he won't tank like I want him to tank. Maybe, this is all cover up. And just like, you think you're gonna, and then it's just like, what was the report? Like he's gonna get mother bleeping Sean Payton here, maybe with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
To right the wrong of all of it. It's like, oh no, we got caught. What do you mean we got caught?
Yeah.
All right, we'll hire this little weirdo. Yeah. And so and I say that lovingly because there are elements I really like Mike McDaniel, but man, yeah, it just feels like the guy can't get out. There is no consistency because he can't even be consistent with himself. So maybe he's at an age where, I don't know, he'll pass it on to somebody in his family who will, because like the other heir apparent got caught tampering with him, so he gets kicked out. Yeah, I don't know, man. So
he's the one who set up the Brady meeting, remember? He's the one who set it up.
Right. And so what was that guy's Bruce Beal? Was that his name?
Yeah, it was Beal. Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I just think that I just think that there's a feeling of this organization under his ownership. I don't know if it can win. I think he's trying, but I just don't have any faith that even if they fire this, who's going to take advantage of him next? I don't know.
And then remember when we weren't very good and they tried to sell us on the fact that like Serena Williams and Enrique Iglesias and everyone bought ownership stakes, and that was like,
oh my God, orange carpet.
I'll say this: Serena Williams would have never done what Beal did. All right, that's all I could say. But you made a really good point there when you're talking about Ross and you're talking about like the wrong people. First thing, have you read Bill Parcells' book? Because apparently he talks about Ross and how he left and he said in the book that Ross will never know how to put the right football people around him and it's going to be a disaster. And this book came out like 2012 and I guess he ended up being right. But something you spoke of about putting the wrong people around him. Let's go to Mike McDaniel. They hire him. He wants to bring in Fangio year one. Nope. You got to keep Boyer. You got to keep Josh Boyer, and you got to keep Danny Crossman. I mean, I don't know who Danny Crossman had photos on in the organization, but how this guy had a job for how long. I'll tell you, I've said this publicly. I'll tell you this. I know I have a direct link to a special teams coordinator in the NFL, and when we faced them 2 years ago, and they were watching Danny Crossman, they were basically calling him a high school level coach. And they're like, how does this guy have a job in the, like, they were like, okay. Do you think this is a matter of like Garfinkel and Shore maybe having too much say instead of getting football minds in there and Ross stepping back and saying, no, I'm going to lean on these football minds? Garfinkel, shout out to you because you've made this a destination with F1 and tennis and everything like that. But that doesn't mean you know football and you know how to do this. Sure, you're great with Cap, but that doesn't mean you're Omar Khan. And even Omar Khan had to put football minds around him in Pittsburgh to be the GM he is right now. Do you think that's where we're at right now, is what you said? He's trusting non-football guys with football-like decisions?
I could see guys being around you that that is their influence because you're there every day with them. And if you are somebody like Tom Garfinkel and you have made this place a destination, does it give you a false sense of security in other positions? Can't say that it doesn't. I mean, we see, guys come over from real estate in the NBA, for example, and they were business guys and they just want to run basketball, like Matt Ishbia and the Suns. Mm-hmm. And so like they just want to put their bats. But I will say with Garfinkel, like, to defend him a little bit, he did replace Mike D, who came up with the worst Dolphins logo I've ever seen in my life. It looks like SeaWorld. So like he obviously also hired bad, CEOs beforehand with this, where it's like, oh, that's my idea. And then the guy ended up trading gigs. And he went to the Padres. I don't remember the Padres exactly becoming a destination. So I think Tom Garfinkel, I would understand why he would earn some trust because he has done a good job with Austin. But I don't sense that I don't know. He's just got a kind of cool presence about him, Tom Garfinkel. I don't have a sense that he's like trying to like manipulate. I just don't think what does it do for him? He's already grand slammed, hit the cycle on being the moneymaker for the Miami Dolphins. Mm-hmm. I don't think he needs any more power. I think you would probably be pretty pleased with your life the way it is because, he'll get some play with, if they ever are able to get to the promised land. I just think, even Steven, it's probably one of the best hires that Stephen Ross has made, to be honest with you. Mm. But, I will say, here's the thing. We've seen so many different football guys around him. He seems like he means well, Stephen Ross. But maybe it's I don't know. Maybe he's easily swayed on what actually somebody can show him in the game. And so why do you go from, not being able to get a GM to Tannenbaum's remember Tannenbaum used to just sit with him at games for like a year. Yeah. He was just in his luxury box. And then all of a sudden, then he's like running the team. And you're just like, he probably talked his way into that, like Sunday by Sunday with a catered luxury box next to Stephen Ross. Like he's just eating shrimp scampi and he goes, I could fix this. He goes, you should try. You do that, Mike.
Well, it kind of feels like that's what Shore, because Shore's done really good work with contracts and cap. And it feels like Shore has a ton of power. And it feels like if Grier might be on the way out, Shore might be pushing for, hey, don't forget about me, Steven. I could probably, I'll go hire a really good football guy and don't worry, I can handle this situation. That's the sense I get, that Brandon Shore is a sleeper to watch because I've been told privately Brandon Shore has more power than Chris Grier. He has Ross's ear more than Grier too. So I've been told Grier's a Garfinkel guy.
It's possible. I mean, but also, I think we've seen with Stephen Ross, it's probably easy to sway who is the guy because I think that he seems like a guy who just gloms onto new guys. So maybe Chris Grier was at one point there and now he's not, So there's no rhyme or reason to that. I think it's one of those things where he is, he's probably got some, but I would imagine, I will say this, it feels like the thinnest ice he's ever been on with the Miami Dolphins.
Who, Grier?
It feels like it is,
yeah.
But I don't know. I was talking with my buddy today, and he's like, I'm like, this is going to end with Mike McDaniel getting fired, and Chris Grier is going to pick the next guy, right? That's what it feels like. It feels. This is my fear for the season. Mm-hmm. They start 1-4. Mike McDaniel unceremoniously fired. Anthony Weaver gets to get his little run. They'll probably finish 500. And then, but maybe it's spirited because they kind of had a better record under Anthony Weaver. And then we're in no man's land. I mean, is Anthony Weaver kicking the job or is he going to go get new people? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, food for thought is, does Grier come expendable if this Flores suit goes to NFL arbitration and gets out of federal? Right? He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows a lot of the stuff that went on. This goes to NFL arbitration, which they're trying to get it to, and doesn't stay in federal court. The NFL ain't going to dig and try to undig bodies and make this situation look worse. They're going to try and close it off and make it go away. Maybe that's what we need to happen. I don't know. But listen, I'll tell you this much. Name another GM in any sport that's on his third head coach that we're fearful will see his fourth head coach that hasn't won a playoff game. That is I can't name one. You're fired after the first coach usually.
Oh yeah, it's crazy how he's been able to weave this one. And there was a report, and this one I don't know if I'm sure you read the story, but it really it just it was a jarring thing for me to read. And it was the second story from Armando Salguero this offseason about Jalen Ramsey. So Armando has the blurb, right? Mm-hmm. And he's it's over a pay cut. And then hours later, he has a second story about, never mind, it's not a pay cut. We deny that. It's not about a pay cut. It's a relationship with the
Yeah.
coach. By the way, Jalen Ramsey has a ton of respect for Chris Grier, which is
Anthony
just a
Weaver.
weird thing to say.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever heard in my life a star player say, I have respect for my general manager. Most of them are telling them to F off because they're not getting the contracts that they want. But even if you do, I've never heard of such a thing. I have respect for my general manager. When in the history of general managing has that ever been respected by a star player? Never. So I just read that and I was like, oh, because like I don't know Armando's sources, but I read enough stuff and I'm like, if I was, where do you think this is coming from? If he's saying we're denying we're being cheapskates with Jalen Ramsey, it's because he hates the coach. By the way, he loves the general manager. He has his respect. And that to me was already speaking of, I don't know this. I'm just putting two together. Like, oh, somebody is trying to make Mike McDaniel the fall guy.
Yeah.
It's not that it's untrue, but
point.
just so you're clear, this isn't he hates the Dolphins organization. He just hates the coach. Oh yeah, the guy you thought was good with the star players. Well, none of them respect him, and he's getting walked all over. Anyway, Toodles, this is the rest of the story for the offseason. Yeah. So it already feels like stuff's leaking in separate directions of blaming him. And
feels like Flores too. It was same thing was happening with Flores.
Yeah,
too. There was clear
a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah. What's crazy about that Armando article is 10 days prior to that was when we got word Jalen Ramsey was the one that was on the block. 9 days prior to Armando Salguero, I had an update on my Patreon, and for my channel members, I already knew that McDaniel was the issue. I didn't know the Grier part. That seems like it was thrown in, but I was already reporting to my subscribers that, yeah, he doesn't like McDaniel. But you could kind of see it. Do you remember watching Hard Knocks? Do you remember how Ramsey always felt like he was like side-eyeing or like looking at McDaniel weird? And it always felt like McDaniel was like over the top trying to be his friend. I don't know if you noticed that, but I noticed that in the Hard Knocks. Like it really, really stood out for me.
I haven't gone back and watched it, but I do remember finding it odd because one thing I do know is I've never heard a coach praise a player more for recovering from injury. Like he was really pro Jalen Ramsey. I feel like this is just my theory. I have no idea, no insight, but my thought is Jalen Ramsey gets here. He doesn't love the defensive coordinator, but the coach doesn't really have authority over the defensive coordinator or doesn't want to mess with the defensive coordinator's stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you have a star player and he goes, so wait, you'll do everything for your offensive players, but you can't fix this for me, whatever it was. And I bet like once that happens, you're like, oh, rats off a ship off this guy. And by the way, Jalen Ramsey's not like the toughest guy in the world to also, flip your energy on. Like he wears out his welcome. That's what he does.
Yeah, I heard that McDaniel started calling him out in meetings and making an example of him last offseason, basically trying to take the stance of, if I'll do this to my best player, none of you are safe, right? The whole Belichick, Tom Brady thing. Apparently it didn't go over very well with Jalen Ramsey because he was like, yo, I'm one of the guys that's showing up, but whatever. What do you think happens in that situation? How do you think this is dealt with before mandatory minicamp so we don't got to deal with the headache of, are they going to fine him or aren't they going to fine him for showing up? Like, do you think this gets dealt with before June 10th?
I thought that it was going to get dealt with like the second we got to June 1st because he was counting down. You don't start a countdown and not have a result of the countdown.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand that. He's like, yeah, 5. And then like next chapter. And like, when's the next chapter? You're going, like, you can't tease that and then nothing happened. Like, that's crazy. If you can't tweet something like that unless you know for sure a deal's coming. And so, yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. It doesn't seem like they're going to care. Like, that's another one that's odd. We're just like, yep, we admit Jalen Ramsey. He doesn't want to be here. We don't really want him. I'm like, wait, you guys, like, who says that on the record? You guys, is that bad for negotiations? How does this work? And it's just, yeah, man, I don't know. It seems like it just goes hand in hand with this. But I'm like, all right, Jalen Ramsey is like, he doesn't like Mike McDaniel. Like, that can't be mended. Like, he didn't like his last coach either. Why are we just agreeing to, best we should go a separate? Like, Well, clearly it's bad because I mean, I have spent way too much time editing and cutting up sound bites of Mike McDaniel. So I've not only heard, I just wanted to let people know I still cut sound at the studio because I just care about that stuff. And so like when I listen to Mike McDaniel press conferences, I'm pretty much listening to them at least twice because I have to listen to it and then re-listen to it to play it on air.
Yeah.
So I've heard way too much of this guy. He is not efficient with words.
Yeah.
When I heard his response to Jalen Ramsey, I was like,
how clear cut it was. We talk about the one today, how clear cut and direct it was.
I didn't even hear today's. I'm talking about even the first where he's like, he was frosty and he was brief. Two things that he's just not naturally.
Yeah.
So I was, I want to know, okay, Jalen Ramsey was annoyed with him getting called out, but like, what was the moment where they both said,
yeah,
because even as a coach, Eric Spoelstra is done with this too. Like Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler are going to fight literally on the court. We should be so this guy knew how Jimmy Butler was for years. But you know what Eric Spoelstra did? He was a professional and he's like, I'm going to make this work. So I want to know, how did Mike McDaniel get to the point where not only, okay, my coach, my star player doesn't like me, has happened a ton in the history of the NFL. Not a new thing. But what was the point where Mike McDaniel was like, I can't coach you anymore?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. Because I know why Jalen Ramsey's sensitive. Jalen Ramsey doesn't feel like he's getting the respect he deserves. Sounds like every piece of Jalen Ramsey's career. It's what makes him a great player, but also a bit of a head case. But so he's been that. Mike McDaniel having a breaking point is like, ooh, I want to know, like, all right, where are we at right now with this guy?
Yeah. Yeah. With the Ramsey McDaniel thing, you need to hear that he gave a 19-second answer. All I got to say is 19 seconds, and you should know that's probably one of the quickest answers in McDaniel history.
100%.
And he said himself, nothing's changed with me.
Yep.
So when he said that, I was like, okay, that means he also don't want Ramsey in the building.
Right. And so that's where I'm so much more interested in that than why Jalen Ramsey's tired. Oh, okay. Not new. Oh, star player doesn't like a coach. Star players like a coach. Not new. What I want to know is a coach who has not been sick of anybody. Hell, he has Liam Eichenberg still on his team.
Tyreek.
He doesn't. Yeah. Like, what the hell happened there?
Yeah. Yeah. That is interesting. What are your thoughts on the Jonnu Smith situation? Because you remember on Tuesday, obviously, the morning Schefter says, hey, Steelers aren't going to trade for Jonnu. Then in the evening, it switches and it turns, hey, Parham, their other tight end, Parham got hurt. I think he's out. He tore his ACL or something.
Achilles or ACL.
Yeah, it's Achilles. Yeah, whatever. And so he's done. And so now they've re-engaged with Jonnu. Jonnu's making about $4.2 million annual average. It's the 32nd highest, pay rate for a tight end in the league this year. Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, who haven't taken a snap, are making more money than him. I've talked about this on my channel. Kind of seems if you could find the middle ground on like a Gesicki deal, right? 3 years, $25.5 million. Gesicki only got about 6.5 of that guaranteed, and the Bengals have an out after 1 year in that deal. Maybe give him 8 or 9 guaranteed, a little bit more than Gesicki. But where are you at with this Jonnu Smith situation? Are you okay with giving him a raise as long as it's not like 10, 12 million? And are you kind of shocked that with Tyreek maybe out the door next year, they might be getting rid of another receiving threat that could help lighten the load when he's gone next year? Does it shock you a bit?
I guess it shouldn't be shocking because like anytime you're at that point in your career where you really haven't gotten a big deal and you just had a career year and you're going to be 30 years old, hell yeah, I'm going to try and strike while the oil's hot. So it just kind of is what the sport is. Like if anybody is sitting here and they're like, stick to your contract, you're Jonnu Smith, kiss my ass. I'm going to be like, dude, the whole NFL is a lottery. If my toe gets stubbed the wrong way, I may not be the same player and they'd cut my ass in a year. They say I'm supposed to make 10 million. Like that sport's ruthless. guys, go get your money. You know what it is, right? It's unlike any other sport in that way. So I have no problem with him, especially the way he upheld himself last year. There's no problem by me, him trying to get a new deal. I imagine he probably wants a pretty big deal. You say 12. I probably think he wants higher than that. I think that's probably why we had the snag, because that report was weird. Adam Schefter coming out and then being like, no trade. But then the second thing that was interesting about his second tweet was that it wasn't the Dolphins or the Steelers having talks with the Dolphins. They were having talks with
Jonnu, yeah.
So they said, so his update was that the contract talks were going well with Jonnu. So obviously, probably before their receiver or their tight end got hurt, maybe the $13 million he wanted was off the table. Lose a tight end, you get a little more desperate. You're going to have Aaron Rodgers. Okay, maybe the price got fixed today, and now all of a sudden we're on our way to a trade. But the only thing that bums me out about it is, like, I think the Dolphins are in a spot where their owner is making the GM and the coach deal with the tools that they paid for last year that didn't succeed. So I think they're like, all right, are we going to ask him to go pay the tight end to be the third highest paid tight end in the league right after we just paid 2 top 5 receiver money to our guys at that point? I don't think that's going to go over well. Then you add on top of it, it seems like you're going to have to pay Zach Sealer, and that is a lucrative position. And I'd imagine he wants a lot of money for the sack numbers he's put up the last 2 years. This is also going to be the big year of the last probably big contract of his career.
He's earned it.
So if you're like, hey, if we get a little relief with the Jalen Ramsey, and are we going to pay Jonnu because we got to pay Zach Sealer? So I think to me, it's just like, look, they clearly don't value the tight end. They gave, they franchised Mike Gesicki, barely used him. And this has kind of been a weird position anyway. And even though Jonnu had a great year last year, I'm not saying it's his fault, but awesome Jonnu Smith, least impressive Dolphins offense over the last 3 years. It's not that I don't think he deserves a raise. He does, but I also kind of get where the organization is at. It sucks they're there because it feels like their bets paid off in the wrong way because the guys that were rewarded last year did not warrant those rewards. So a good guy like Jonnu who breaks out, he gets screwed from the sense of the franchise you're with and want to be with can't pay you. But at least, he'll end up with a good deal. And I hope the Dolphins get a pretty decent asset for him.
Whether Jonnu's here or not, what are your expectations this year for Tua in the offense?
It's hard because I have no idea what the line's going to be like.
Are you happy with the draft and Jonnu Smith being added in James Daniels?
I'm actually more worried about. It's not about a Savai. I think I will trust that he's going to be good. Mm-hmm. I hope like hell Patrick Paul is going to be good.
Yeah.
James Daniels coming off an Achilles is that's like,
which guy are you getting? Yeah.
I'm hope. That's a hope, Yeah. And then if he stinks, who's there to tap him on the shoulder. So, that has me worried because I feel like it can disrupt anything. I'm curious to see if any of the young running backs pop. Like, who's going to be Achan's guy? Like, is Ollie Gordon gonna burst out? Is Jalen Wright gonna be a stud? Like, so I'm curious about that. That's probably one of the more fascinating questions is like, who else is going to evolve out of that backfield for this team?
Yeah. And
then I think that, you got to hope that Tyreek and let's just, say that Tyreek's going to play the season, that he's back to normal and Jaylen Waddle's up to snuff. I think the offense would be okay. Even sans Jonnu Smith, maybe Julian Hill grew hands over the offseason, dude. I don't know.
Go Jalen Conyers. Take his job, baby. Let's go. Where are you at with Tua, though? If he gets hurt, listen, I've supported Tua since Bama, but if he gets hurt, sign me up for the Garrett Nussmeier, the Nuss Bus, or sign me up for Lenore Sellers out of South Carolina. Where are you at if he can't stay healthy this year? Are you ready to, okay, we got to figure this out. We can't have a guy playing, we can't have Terran Armstead 2.0 with a guy playing maybe 10, 12 games a year, especially at that position.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's very much. I think it's it's the season for him. Like it's going to be. I mean, like I'm sure the season 2 years ago was bigger stakes for him because then it rewarded him with a big contract. But as far as like, will this franchise still rely on you? Yeah, this is the year because still no playoff wins. Been hurt for 2 of them. Yeah. Not acceptable. So. He's been rewarded at the highest degree with this team. He's had a coach that's revitalized his career that I think, has been a great relationship between both of them. He needs wins and he needs health. He needs wins. He needs wins in big games. Like these showdowns that are going to happen between elite quarterbacks, man, you even in the lead up to getting to the playoffs, you need to have big moments to make your fan base proud again. They can't keep pooping the bed in front of the nation and embarrassing this whole franchise and fan base. And he plays a big part in that. I will have no issue if he never tries to run. I don't understand why. I hated the fact when he stopped doing jiu-jitsu. I thought that was really dumb. I think if you had something that was working, protecting yourself, you should stick with that. And then the thing is like, the one place where I was disappointed with him is like, all right, you find something that works. You do something to get yourself on the field. It keeps you safe. But then it's like, well, I did that. Now I want to test those limits a little bit. Man, I thought that was stupid. Like, we found your safe zone. Roll backwards or throw the ball away. No running.
Yeah.
He's just terrible at it. He's not fast. He's not mobile. He's never going to be mobile. But he also is not only not mobile, he has about the least amount of body awareness I've ever seen, especially with all his vulnerabilities. And I'm like, why do you keep doing that? It's the fact that we have to standing ovation you sliding is ridiculous behavior by everybody. But this is what it is. Like, this is the experience of rooting for this guy because you're rooting so much for him to succeed. But it's not only that, but you're also like, but also please don't get hurt and make me feel bad about you wanting you out there again. Yeah. So yeah, man, I mean, it's the year for him. Yeah. And that's knowing that, that if the window's closed already, it's kind of closed because you're not the dude. If this team is, and he's really going to be that guy, like he's going to have to open the window a little bit more himself instead of showing everybody that all their concerns were true.
Yeah. I think the issue too is like, we just can't ever string it together. Like how many games you see where, what was the Broncos game, the last game where we scored 70 points, where you saw all different phases clicking. I mean, go look at 2022 and 2024 in Buffalo, right? Should have swept them in 2022. Tua was really good in Buffalo when people told us he couldn't play in the snow. What happened? Sherfield and Tyreek each dropped a touchdown on the same drive. Josh Boyer his defense gives up a 3rd and 17. They score. Any one of those 3 things goes our way, we win. Last year, 2nd highest EPA per dropback ever against the Sean McDermott Buffalo Bills defense. But what happens? Special teams puts up the worst EPA per play ever against the Sean McDermott Bills. And our defense puts up one of the worst EPA per play performances ever against the Buffalo Bills. So even when Tua does show up, we can't get the other phases to show up. And then when Tua doesn't show up, the other phases show up. Like the Texans game. When Tua wasn't good, the other phases were showing up. You know what I mean? And then the Packers game. He's about, right? Remember that sequence? He's about to put us within a couple points of that game in the 3rd quarter. And Mike McDaniel decides to have one of the worst play calling sequences. You remember on the 3rd down, he even took out Waddle and Tyreek. And it was like, what were you doing with the personnel usage? Like, it's like we can't just get everything clicking on all cylinders. You know what I mean? And it's like the Broncos game is a perfect example. Look at the first time, was that the only time in the 3 years that we had a fully healthy offensive line of McDaniel and we put up 70 points?
that's almost like the whole foundation of it being built off a guy
So
on the end of your line who's like, it's literally roulette if he can be out there, is kind of just apropos of the era, because it's like the first big signing of the era. He's amazing talent, but he's going to play 12 games this season. And that's what it's felt like. You got 12 games where you really feel like you have a chance with the Miami Dolphins. Yeah. And then inevitably they're going to probably disappoint you in 3 of them to just be a little short of where they need to be.
Yeah. Obviously, I know you talked about offensive line depth, but I guess everyone would narrow in on the fact that our biggest Achilles heel this year is probably our secondary. You know, we got Ashton Davis and Melifanu, guys who historically can't stay healthy, but the athletic and the playing upside, especially if Melifanu was there. Another year of Patrick McMorris. He looked really good in the preseason, but then he got hurt. Elijah Campbell, I don't know if he's ever going to be more than a special teams guy. But then when you go to that boundary, it seems like the outside reps based on the second half of the season last year are going to be there for Kohu. Maybe Artie Burns goes into the slot. But then it's really a crapshoot because you got Cam Smith who hasn't turned anything. The talent is there, but the work ethic from the player is just not. You know, you got Ethan Bonner who Fangio held him in high regard. It seemed like Weaver didn't hold him as high regard because Storm Duck got all the opportunities last year. Is this the worst secondary in the NFL right now? And how worried are you? Yes, our front seven is fantastic if they can stay healthy, especially on the edge. It's fantastic. But how worried are you with, man, that front seven can be as good as you want, but you're gonna have some plays where you gotta hold coverage, and I don't know about this. Where are you with this secondary?
Yeah, the secondary is concerning. I will give them credit from the standpoint of, for whatever reason, they can't draft cornerbacks, but they seem to be pretty good at finding.
Yeah.
So maybe they can do that. It's a great thing that you always got to roll the dice on undrafted guys.
Yeah.
No, but I got to give them credit where they are good at that. It was funny. I think, didn't Mike McDaniel say something today about he said something about Patrick Paul like not having a wasted rookie year and how nobody's allowed to really waste a rookie year anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, Cam Smith just kind of feel like he wasted his rookie year.
Channing
and then maybe
Tindall?
his second. Yeah. I'm just like, all right. But so I will say some things on football I'll never know and understand as good as my buddy Leroy Hoard, who I do a radio show with. My guy has 2 things that he truly stands by. He thinks, that you're not going to go anywhere unless you can run in short yardage. And my man, I don't know if you guys know the name Leroy Hoard, but go look it up and see what my man was known for, because he's got one of the most badass quotes of all time to John Madden, which is, Leroy Hoard, if you need 1 yard, I'll get you 3. And if you need 5, I'll get you 3.
3. Yeah.
Like my guy is personified in the short yards game. And by the way, almost too much, because some people think that he was like Browns and Vikings Lusaka Polite. He was not. My man has some big badass plays, but he's been fortified in that take, and it has been one of the shortcomings of this team is their inability to control the line of scrimmage and muscle up in games. The other thing, though, that he swears by is, look, it may not be great, but if the front seven can be all right, and they look like they could be all right,
we'll be good.
If Kenny G comes together with Zach Sealer, hopefully he's not holding out on us. But that'll be all right. And I do think Storm Duck was okay. Caterco are they gonna get toasted sometimes? Sure. But I think I think the Dolphins, and I trust Anthony Weaver, I think I'm gonna be okay with if it's the worst and it's glaring, okay. But I think they'll live, and we know why they're there. That's unfortunate they've gotten to this point with Ramsey, and maybe they bring in a vet. But, yeah, I get all the doubts right now.
Yeah. All right, man. Where can people find you on your social medias? And, go ahead. The floor is yours. Plug away, my friend.
Oh, cool. You guys, appreciate you checking out the show. Check out the Tobin and Leroy Show, which you can get on all your podcast platforms if you want to listen to us live on the Odyssey app or on the 560 WQAM YouTube page. And if you want some of my solo content, go to @Tobin Show on YouTube and @Brendan_Tobin's all my social media. You can get linked to all the right places there as well.
Hey man, it was a pleasure having you on. I'm not gonna ask you for a record prediction because we gotta let everything play out with camp and everything like that. But man, we should do this again. I know the subscribers really wanted it, and we're out here to deliver what the fans want. So thanks, man. It was a great conversation. I appreciate you. Guys, make sure you smash that like button. Subscribe, turn on the bell for notifications, and hey, if a Jonnu Smith trade breaks, I'll be live. If not, you can expect me on Thursday, all right? As always, fins up all day, every day, and we'll see you on the next one.